Okay, so I'm going to work on the CheckDigit free response question, which is one of the practice questions for Unit 4. And I'm going to use CodeHS's sandbox. So we'll start by creating a program, selecting Java main. And the first thing I'm going to do is go in and create that the class that we need. So it's file, and it will be CheckDigit.java. And as usual, I'm going to get rid of the public static void main. We don't need that. We've already got that in my program. This is the class file, so of course we don't need it in here. Now, I like to start off by just recognizing that we're probably going to need instance variables and maybe a constructor. I like to label these just for the sake of learning, for the educational value. It turns out, actually, in this particular program, we don't need either instance variables or constructors, because I think we're going to end up writing all of our methods, all of our class methods are going to be static. And so this actually is a good time to kind of review exactly what that means and see an example where we're not using instance variables or a constructor. Well, it's, possibly they could be used in this class, but we don't need them to answer the question. So the next thing we're going to do is go back and go through that question. It's fairly lengthy. It's a 4-page question. And it's actually kind of an interesting question for a couple of different ways. I'm going to assume that you've already read through the question and that you've, I'll just set it up so you can see each page. And you can always pause it and have a look. There's a second page, not much here. Third page gives us a bit more of a description for exactly what has to happen for questions A and B. So there's question A up at the top, and that is to write the getCheck method. Now the getCheck method is dependent on using two helper methods, the getNumberOfDigits and getDigit method. It says they've both been provided. We don't actually have them here, so we're going to write those just for fun. Okay, and then this question finishes off with an explanation for exactly what part B needs to do. So let's go back to part A. Write the getCheck method, which computes the check digit for a number according to the following rules. And again, you can read through exactly what has to happen here, but if the number, for example, was 283415, it needs to multiply the number 7 times the 2. It needs to multiply the next number, which is 8 times 6, 3 times 5, 4 times 4, just as it iterates through this integer. Until we get down to 1 times 3, until we get down to 5 times 2, the last digit. And then we add up the totals of each of these, and that gives us 106. What CheckDigit does is it removes the rightmost digit, and that gives us the getCheck value. Here's another example, 2183, and it returns the integer value 2. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to just go through and we're going to actually write these methods first, getNumberOfDigits. We're going to need that in order to solve this problem. So what we'll do is we'll go back to here, and inside of CheckDigit, we're going to go public getNumberOfDigits, and we're obviously going to need that num as an argument here. And you know what? I'm going to get rid of these because we are not going to need those in this case. Okay, but normally we'd have those. It's the reason I put those in there initially. So how can we actually determine how many digits there are inside of a number? Well, there's a number of ways that we can do this, but just using the code that we've learned so far in the course, we're going to need some kind of counter. So we'll go int count equals 0, and then we're going to have we could use a while loop, I suppose. While num is greater than 0. So that's this num up here. As long as it's greater than 0, what are we going to do? We're going to go count plus equals 1. So we're going to increment count. Starts at 0, increment as we go. And then we're going to say num equals num divided by 10. So what is that going to do? Well, that's going to, in essence, truncate one number off the right-hand side with each division. If you divide by 10, remember what happens. We're not using modulus here. We're using integers and integer division. And so what happens is once it makes that that division, it's simply going to remove the right-hand digit. Okay, and you can test that out yourself. So we could actually do a quick demo. Let's just leave this. We better put a return value here. And by the way, we've got to put that up here. Public, and what are we going to be returning? It's going to be an int, which is going to be the number of digits inside of here. And so our return value is going to be whatever is left. Or sorry, it's going to be our count, return count. Okay, but let's just check the output on this and see what's actually happening if we divide a number by 10. So we'll go quickly back here to our main program, and we can add a printout here. And we'll see what's happening with num with each iteration inside of that while loop. So we're going to go, actually we have to call the class first, so CheckDigit. Normally we'd use an object to call one of the class methods, but since this is a static, thank you, since this is a static method, we can actually call it simply by invoking the class itself. Okay, and then we'll use get number of digits. I'm just going to copy and paste it so I don't make a silly mistake here. And then we'll send in a number, and I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we're going to do a system.out. Print line, we'll go to the end of the line here, add another bracket at the end. And let's see if we have any errors. That'll be our first step. You can make a prediction on that one. Okay, we've got one here. Let's see, checkdigit.java3, checkdigit 3, public static int, get number of digits. Expected, yes. So we also have to just put a type in here. And let's try again. System.out. Okay, so let's do a capital S. That's better. Hopefully you notice that. A little test just to see if you're paying attention. And everything looks pretty good. So what we saw here was with each division, it's printing out. So it's already dividing by 10, then doing the print out. Okay, and dividing by 10 in this case, again, in essence, is truncating the right-hand number off the side of that integer that we sent in. And we can see that happening all the way down to 0. It would then do the check to see if it's greater than 0, which of course it wouldn't be, which would terminate that while loop, and then it would return count. And then it would print out count here because of that system.out.print line, and it's going to print whatever is returned, and what we're returning is our count number. I'm going to comment this out. We don't need this anymore. I'll save that. We'll run it again. We should just get 6 since we're sending in 6 digits. Let's do this. I don't know. We'll go 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Save that, and we should get a 5. And if we change that last number, that's irrelevant. It's counting the number of digits. It's not returning that last number. So let's just make sure that that's clear. And there we go. First part is working. Now, we've already done something that's not even part of the question, but it's still, I think, important to work through and see if we can solve this whole thing, create the entire class, partly for the practice, but we will get to the actual questions as well, too. Okay, the second part of this question, or the second helper method that's not given to us is getDigit. And so that's going to return the nth digit of its int parameter. Wow, okay. So let's go back here, and what exactly does that mean? Does it give us a better getDigit? Does it give us a better explanation? Oh yeah, here we go. So getDigit 2834151, that means we want to find the first digit, which of course is going to be 2. How do we solve that one? Well, let's go through and kind of pseudocode this out loud. What would be the steps to get a digit here? So what we need to do is we need to first of all know how many digits we have in total, and we've got the get number of digits method, which we can use for that. And then we would iterate through once for every digit, and what we would do is divide by 10 until we've reached the number of digits asked for. Actually, the reverse of that. Okay, so let me try and explain this as we actually solve it. That, I don't know, maybe that'll be a little more clear. It's actually not as complicated as I'm making it sound here. So once again, we've got, public static. It's going to be an int. We're going to return an int again because we're going to return the actual value at whatever point we've been requested to return. And this is going to be get digit. And we're going to go int num int n. So again, looking at the problem, if we sent in this value here, okay, that's our integer, that's our number, I should say, and we want to find out what the first value in that is it should return to. Okay, in this case, if we want to find the fifth value, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it should return a 1. All right, shouldn't be too complicated to do this, so let's just start writing here. We're going to need to do some kind of count here. Int count, I think we will anyway, equals get number of digits num. And then we'll iterate through for, we know the number here, int I equals 0, I is less than count, I plus plus. And what do we actually want to do here? Well, okay, this is going to be interesting. Num equals num divided by 10. We want to remove digits is what we want to do until we get to the nth digit, and then we want to return it. How will we return that nth digit? Well, we'd use the modulus operator for that. So we'd return num modulus 10. But I think, well, let's just see what happens when we run this. This is not going to give us the result we want, but that's okay. It's okay for now. We'll hopefully figure out what's wrong here. So let's go system dot. We'll use that same number, 5, 2, 3, 4, 1. And let's get the second digit, which we know is a 2. Okay, and I don't think this is going to work, but let's try it. Maybe you've noticed a problem already. Hopefully you have. Okay, it's returning 0. We don't have a 0 in here. So I think the first thing we need to do is go back and have a look here. And this should probably be, let's see. Yes, I is less than count. Okay. Let's try this. Let's add one of these in here so we can actually see what it's doing as we're working through that number. Okay, so we're gonna print out num each iteration. Let's run it. Okay, so our number was back here 52341, and you can see it's removed the 1 off the end. Then it removes the 4, then the 3. But in fact, what we actually want to do is we want to count from the front of this, because if, for example, we're trying to return the second digit, it should return 2. That's going to be a bit tricky if we're starting to count from the far right-hand side, or we're starting to remove digits from the far right-hand side. It turns out that's the easiest thing to do. So how can we solve this? Well, what we actually need to do is we need to count minus n. I believe that should do it. So what we're doing now is if count is, say, 5 digits in this case, we're going to subtract from that our nth value, which we're trying to return, which would be 2 in this case. And so we're only going to we're only going to remove 3 digits before we then return, using the modulus operator, the next value. Okay, let's see if this works. And it looks like it did work, which is terrific. And what we'll do is change this to a 3 just to verify that it's working. Okay, so third digit is in fact a 3. Let's run this. We can do one more test. Yeah, that's good. Let's return the first value, which should be 5. And so what it's doing, because we've used count minus n, okay, so again, our count is our total number of digits, which is 5, minus n, which is the one we want to return, which is 1. It means it's going to go through 4 iterations here. And in other words, it's going to remove, using num divided by 10, it's going to truncate those first 4 digits. And we can see that here. Before it even prints, it's already removed 1, okay, 2, 3, 4, and then returns what's left, which is the 5. Hopefully it's not too complicated. The question is not asking you to do this, but well, it could. That would be a reasonable question to ask, I would think. So we've got our helper methods. We can actually start solving the problem now. I know this has been a long explanation already, but I think it's good to go through and see if we can solve this entire class. So what do we have to do for part A? We've got to write the getCheck method. And the getCheck method, okay, it computes the check digit for a number according to the following rules. Multiply the first by 7, second digit if one exists by 6, okay, and so on. Add them up, and then it returns the last one on the right-hand side. Okay, this is, wow. getCheck. Do we see an example of this? Example 1. Okay, and it returned. Okay, so what it does first of all is compute this checksum here, or this value here that is described up here. And then what it's going to do is return the last digit, which is a 6. And there we go, it returns that 6 value. Here, once again, it uses the number 2183. By running it through the calculation, we end up with 2 times 7, 1 times 6, 8 times 5, 3 times 4. Sums those up, we get the number 72. Returns the right-hand value, which is a 2. Okay, lots to this. Let's see if we can solve it. And we may need to use a couple of variables. Now, again, these aren't instance variables. These are method variables. There are no instance variables that are needed as of yet. So we're going to go public static, and we're going to return an int again, and getCheck is the method, and it requires an integer, which is num. Okay. I think there's a couple of variables that I'm going to set up here. Maybe we can return these after, or return them. Maybe we can remove them after if we don't need them. Of digits, so we're going to need to know that our get number of digits. So that's going to return, that's going to obtain a value from the get number of digits method. Okay, it's going to return the count, and it's going to assign that to length. That's going to help us in terms of iterations. Okay, we need a multiplier here. So int, our multiplier is going to initially be equal to 7. Might be able to return that or remove that one after, we'll see. And then we've got to do some kind of count, or I'll just call it total. Tot equals, our total is going to initialize to 0. Now we're going to start iterating through. Okay, so for int I equals 0, I is less than length, I plus plus. And what exactly are we going to do here? Well, we're going to say int current digit equals get digit num digit. Okay, so what are we doing? Well, we're returning, what we want to do is return that first digit. So get digit, we know that that's going to be actually a 1. So maybe we need to initialize that variable up here as well too, don't we? We need a digit to know where our counting is. Int digit equals 1. Again, we're probably going to be able to remove this and simplify it. Actually, you know what we could do? Here's an easy way. I'm going to get rid of digit here. We don't need that. We've already got a counter inside of our for loop. If we set this to 1 and make this less than or equal to, then we can actually use I here. Okay, so it'll start with the first digit and count up. So it's going to get that digit. We've got to multiply it out. Our total is going to be equal to total plus our multiplier. times current digit, which was returned above. Okay, and then we better increment one or two things here. Our multiplier, we're going to actually decrement. And we removed our other variable so we don't have to increment that. Wow, okay. And our return statement, what are we going to return? Total modulus 10. And remember, if you modulus 10 an integer value, basically what you're doing is removing the far right-hand value. That's what's happening here. Okay, we're going to save this, and let's see if this works. We're going to pick something nice and simple here. So we want to do get check. I'm just going to copy this. We're not going to need this. And we better change this to get check. And we're going to pick one really simple. It's very simple to do. We'll do 11. And 11 is going to go 1 times 7 plus 1 times 6, which gives us 13. So it should return a 3 if we've done this right. Let's see if we've got any errors first. That's always the first hurdle to get past. Okay, it did return a 3. That's excellent. I'm going to just comment these out so it's not distracting to see a bunch of other things being printed. Hopefully that was clear why that one worked. Okay, now why are we getting two things printed here? I must have left something to print inside of get. Oh, I think I left something here, didn't I? System out, yeah, print line num. Let's comment that out. There we go. Let's try that again. And now we've just got the 3. Perfect. So we could for sure simplify this, but maybe let's come back to that afterwards because we've got one more method to write. I would probably do something like this. That's our solution to A. And I'm going to put solution B here. We'll go back to the question, see what we've got to actually solve. And B is valid method. It returns true if its parameter num with CheckDigit, which represents a number containing a CheckDigit, is valid, and false otherwise. Okay, so what this does is 159 should return 2. Okay, that's get check, sorry, is valid. Okay, so using that same number, what it's done is it's added on the check value here on the end, 1592, and that's going to return true because included in that integer 159 is the actual check digit here, which is our validity checker. Okay, so that should work. Let's shouldn't be too complicated to write this one actually. All we should have to do is run the get check method and then add that whatever is returned from the get check method, truncate that number onto the end. That should be all we have to do, I think. And then of course return whether it's true or not. Actually, it's the reverse of that. What we need to do is extract that first digit. That's what we need to do. So we'll have to do a modulus 10. We'll have to take that value 2, and then we've got to do a comparison of the, say, 159 to ensure that its check value is the integer 2. Okay, that's what we've got to do. All right, so let's get to the coding here. And we're going to go public static again. It's an integer we're dealing with that we're going to return here. No, we're going to actually return a Boolean. And it's going to be is valid. And once again, we're going to use num, which is going to be an int. Okay, that looks good. So, as we already said, if the number modulus 10, if that number modulus 10 is equal to get check num divided by 10. Remember, we're removing that right num, or right, the most right integer, okay, inside of that number, because that's our check value. So we need to remove it. So if the number modulus 10, okay, which let's say in the example that we're given here is a 2. Okay, if that number is actually equal to the calculation we're going to do using the getCheck method, if those are the same, then we should return true. Else, and remember, if we only have one line in our if statements, we can actually get tricky and remove those brackets. All right, let's try this. So now I'm going to go like this and copy this. And I'm going to use the example given, 1592. Was that the correct number? Just make sure I got that right. And so we should be expecting a true here. Or an error. Let's just see. Drum roll, please. Okay, we've got an error. All right. What happened here is valid. Okay. So, yes. Did you notice that? I did not notice that. Save. Okay, we'll try and run again. We got a true. Let's change this to a 3. Our check value should be 2, so this should return a false. Okay, it looks like we are done. Now, you might tune out now, but just before you go, let's see if we can simplify the getCheck method. Okay, we should be able to get rid of some of these values. Int length. Actually, this is the easiest one to remove. All we're going to do is go like this. I'll copy that. Go down to where I used length, which is right here, and paste that right over top. And we can get rid of this line. I'll just comment it out. I'm not going to actually remove it for now. Okay, I want to make sure it still works. Okay, good, still working. And actually what we could do is where we check that method, get number of digits. Where was that? Get number of digits. Let's just uncomment this, save it, run, make sure it's all working nicely. Okay, good. And we can probably get rid of multiplier as well too. We cannot get rid of total, but let's try and get rid of our multiplier. So what would this be equal to? Well, we know that we're starting with 1. This is actually quite simple. All we would do is go, instead of our multiplier, we would go 8 minus I. That should do the exact same thing because I starts at 1, which would give us 7. Second iteration, it increments to 2. And 8 minus 2 is 6. Then 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, that is going to work. Multiplier. Okay, yes. We don't need this line either. I forgot to comment that out. We'll run it. There we go. And we have greatly simplified this. I'm going to remove those lines. We don't need those. We can get rid of these ones as well too. And we've got a much simpler method. We're going to need total. We've got to be able to count that up because that's we're going to return the last digit, if you remember. And it looks like we're done this problem. Wow, that was a good one. All right, that's it for now. Over and out.